We're
Yay!
doing it. So welcome everyone. This is the first of what is highly likely to become a series of conversations with artists, community networkers, healers. In fact, those three things often go together to become one. And so me and Theresa Sgobba, hello Theresa.
Hi.
We know each other because we've collaborated a couple of times on mainly very creative things that have involved building community. So the theme of today will probably center around freeing that creative spark to move forward into creation, but also like how that involves community. We'll see what actually happens, but that tends to be where we end up creating together. One project we did was, well, it started off with you had created an online network with your partner, Steve and Shelley. And that was sort of inspired by bringing people together, if I'm right, for like connecting on people who see eye to eye in these times about all kinds of things that we're wanting to improve about the world and our lives and growing food and all, all the aspects of life. And I started to host some events through the online network that you guys built. And then from that came the invitation and the kind of impulse for me to come out to the States where you are in Tennessee and do a community on a piece of land together, which was like creative in the deepest way possible because it involved all the aspects of life, right? From like the big visions of, I don't know, how society could be, right down to the nuts and bolts of like who's taking out the recycling, what are we doing with the veg growing, like that's like all of it. So yeah, me and Theresa often end up messaging each other and having really juicy conversations and have been saying for some time, let's do that and let's record it. So here we are. Yeah, do you want to add something to that?
Yeah, thanks, Bryony. I'm so happy to be with you as always. And yeah, Brian and we lived together for a while out here in Tennessee. And when she moved back, now she lives in Wales. We just started, I love Telegram because we leave these voice messages to each other all the time. And I just felt so much life and juice in the exchange, the creative exchange between us, that it just felt like we wanted to create something together. And we always we just feel like, I feel like, I used to do a podcast too. And I feel like conversations generate the new in a way, it's a creative collaboration just to have a conversation. So it's fun to do that together. So thanks for asking.
Yeah, and also the theme of like the idea of doing a series of talks is kind of like maybe looking at different angles on the sort of central point of how do a lot of us want to bring our creative ideas of what we see that we could make happen. How can we like literally get that from here out there? Like what are the practicalities? What are the ways that we can make that more possible, and sharing experiences about what we've been doing in that way, so we can inspire each other. So yes, it'd be nice for us to both share about our different projects we've got on the go or kind of bobulating in our imagination, and also see if we end up referring to some of those past experiences. But part of what sparked this too was wanting to share with you, Theresa, about this. What I've recently launched is this West Wales Expression Centre. And so like the impulse to do that actually, so I've been hosting I'm a dancer, singer, actress, performer. I've produced shows and toured and been in numerous bands and theatre things in my past. And so have been hosting concerts where I perform and gather the audience and find a venue. And then when I launched this West Wales Expression Centre, it was the need to actually dance a bit more. I'm in a rural area and I wanted to meet more people who want to come and jam. So I started a weekly contact improvisation jam, which is a style of dance that involves use touch and weight bearing and give and take of weight to kind of connect and dance, and that can go kind of anywhere really. It's a very fast way to connect, and then you can solo dance, and we provide live music too, so there's a sort of performative element. And yeah, so there was a combination of, I want to provide something for this local community. I've hosted contact improv in the past, but I want to do this as a jam space, partly because I also just want to dance with people, like not just on my own. So like, where are all these wild people that want to express themselves? And that's how that's all started to happen.
Yeah, cool. It reminds me of how Brian and I were talking before this about like how does the impulse, the internal impulse of the creative spark meet the outer world, you know? And I feel like when I did the On Stream podcast, I basically like I had this very buttoned up career life before I started the awakening process, I guess. I have just so those who don't know me, I have like a legal background of all things. So like very like mentally trained. But when I started having an awakening, like Stephen and I started the On Stream podcast, and that was really about that interaction of an awakening we were having in ourselves and what we wanted, which was like creative freedom, busting out of the matrix, being who you really are. We wanted to talk to people who were further on that journey than we were. It's sort of the same in the On Stream network, the social network that Stephen and I ran, that Brian referred to. Like that also came from this inner impulse of, oh, I want to meet these times. I want to meet, like, chaos is going on in the world, and like people are, we're all kind of flailing during COVID. What's happening? I wanted to serve that moment. And it felt like this really authentic. It wasn't this mental thing. It wasn't like, oh, I need to serve this moment. It was like, oh, I really want to come forward. And it's very within me to connect people. That's like something that's like that's a big impulse within me. And I see it, I look back to like, the past too. I've always been a connector, and I really wanted to bring people together then. And so that was where that impulse came from too. And so I really do think there's this interactive moment of something's arising in me that wants to come forward and serve, and meets the community where it's at. So I feel like that's similar to what you were sharing about your impulse with the West Wales Expression Center.
Yeah, and like when you talk about you're a connector, because that's a really intricate creative act to connect people. So, you know, just to be super clear, we're talking about creation so broadly as not just
Yes.
art and performing and singing songs you've written, but obviously anything that you bring that's deeply creative for you. And I see that in you, Theresa, like as one of your massive superpowers is this like creativity that starts to move in you around getting people together to do stuff, or to create environments where they might get really excited about what they want to give. Can you,
Yeah. Oh,
yeah,
go ahead.
no, I was going to say, can you share about like that, how that works for you a bit more about like in the creativeness of,
Yeah, I really appreciate you making that distinction, because I thought of it too when you were first sharing that. I used to be one of those people, and for anyone else who's listening to this who feels this way, who thought I like wasn't creative, So I think it's kind of awesome to be the first conversation in this series to kind of just talk about what is creativity anyway. Creativity is like we are naturally, like that's our natural impulse, is to create, like if we, with the universe, like we're designed to create. And I thought creativity was limited to somebody who could draw, who could sing, you like, or somebody who would be like my archetype of like, oh, this is a creative person and I'm not. And so it's helpful to bust that, because like what we do is create. So creating a community is creating, like I create, homeschool and school lessons with my daughter every day. It's a super fun creative process to see what's going to unfold with the day. So busting that myth for anybody who's thinking I'm not creative, like that's just the conditioning. I feel like I was subject to that too. We are, and we could talk, gosh, at length about that, about what's been done to kind of suppress our creative powers, but that's one of those things, right? So for me, with the, in terms of your question and like the connection, um, yeah, I think like in that time, in COVID, I just felt like, wow, what's being done in the world is trying to separate. It was like that's done, that's not just during COVID, but it's increased since then, but it's been always like that. Democrat, Republican, whatever, like there's these created camps, to divide us. And I think that's the disease of humanity, is the idea of feeling separate. Anyway, so maybe that's why that natural impulse arises in me to want to connect, because I feel like that's, you were saying at the beginning, like these categories overlap: artist, healer, community
Yeah.
networker, because I feel like that is a healing impulse. When I think about what it is, it's a healing impulse to want to, if I feel like the disease is separation, it's an impulse in me that wants to heal that, to connect people. And so it felt like also, so there's the connection impulse, and then there's also the like building the new in these times. So it feels like all these really old ancient systems are collapsing, and there's this desire to connect. If that system is built on separation, this connection impulse is there also to want to rebuild in a way that's aligned with nature, that's aligned with our personal freedom, our creativity. Like I get, more excited than anything, and this is what the Own Stream Network was about, and the podcast is about, building a totally new way that's from our creative impulses and not from, the systems that would want to keep us confined.
Yeah. And this, like, literally this moment of this feeling of where we get excited with our ideas. So as an artist who creates community networks, for example, in your example you just shared, because I know you write poetry too, and you're really good at writing in general. There's all kinds of things, but or mothering, that's like a whole massive creative.
It's very creative.
Yeah, I mean, that's the
Literally
thing.
creating.
Yeah, the biggest creation. And in the end, like the whole of life is the artistic creation, because it's the day to day that we're creating all the time, the way we perceive everything. Sometimes I look at something that's happening in nature and I think, well, I'm seeing that and I'm framing it because I'm bringing artistry to this moment. So we can do it instantly. And then, in that, what I feel from spaces I've been in of yours, Theresa, is like where you've created an opportunity for people to come together is like such a freedom in it, like that, almost like that, the energy of flow and ease and relaxation, where people feel I can come into this space, I'm going to be accepted for exactly where I'm at, like what I'm struggling with, what I'm not very good at, what I love, what I want to do, where like all of me will be accepted here. I'm not going to be like handheld. That's how I feel it, but like I will be welcome. And then so much can spark, so it's literally like that part of us that has a really quite a specific sense about something. Like when I write songs and stuff, often there's like a real a feeling of like it's a kind of energy, literally an energy that I want to give in that moment. And it ends up as the same. I want people to come to a concert and leave hopefully feeling inspired about their own life, because it brings that the event itself, or if it's a contact jam or a dance participation event or whatever, it brings that person more into their own source, like their own connection with the earth, not striving. And so that's something we spoke about before, is like the way the system and the world is designed to distract us, and that's what we're moving out of. And sometimes we kind of got one foot in one and one foot clearly in the other.
Oh yeah, and I feel like this time is like the zenith of that, or something like that. It's the biggest contrast that we've experienced, at least in our lives. But like I feel like now people want to know, like, why does it look like the world is crazy? And I feel like it's this contrast is like asking us to choose, because it's like we are the most distracted, most possibly distracted generation moment in time possible, you know, with what's been done with iPhones and technology and like the massive influx of like social media platforms and just like the desire to distract us is it's the and the methods to distract us are so huge right now. And not to mention like the political contrast and everything. I think that can be a distraction as well because we want to be put into those, you know, those separate camps and we want to be distracted into the darkness too, you know, and that's we're just fed that. We're fed that constantly. And even, you know, Sophia, our daughter, will be like, you guys are on your phones all the time. And like we're actively trying to not. Like I don't look at any news broadcast. I don't, you know, I have no social media platforms on my phone and still it's still very addictive, you know. So I think that staying true to who you are and like finding that creative impulse in these times is like maybe the most challenging, the most conditioned and distracted and like unrested time that we've been in. And yet, I think that contrast is also generating the impulse like to disengage. Like if you can see noise, I think there is like it is an opportunity to say like, wait, I don't want that. Like there's something real here. And I do this because I think this is what's like the aligned in me. What's staying true to what's in me amid the chaos.
Yeah. And actually, like what you're saying, with the more distraction there is and the more unsatisfying that feels, that
Yes.
actually it, for a lot of people, it brings them more back to, I don't want that. I
Yes.
do want to get more into my own flow. So that at the same time as there's an agenda to try and pull us out of, it's actually maybe guiding us more back in.
Yes.
So I wonder if you wanted to share anything about, like, because we spoke about this creative spark, freeing the creative spark, and sometimes over and over again. Like we might have a period where we bring something into fruition and then we go into more of a plateau, or like, okay, that wave ends and then there's another thing. But we can always have moments of resistance to my next idea. How am I going to do it? Like, what's that? You know, do you want to speak about that moment? I know you spoke about this really interesting idea you had about a group to start. I don't know if you want to mention that too, but
Yeah, I think, and I'm curious how this went for you too, coming out of
yeah,
Lady Lane and then moving back to Europe
yeah,
and then now where you're at now with the West Wales Expression Center. But yeah, for me, I think, you know, the first breakout I had of my like old life was the Own Stream podcast. And it was such a, it was like I've had this experience now twice and I'm in a plateau now, which I'll explain in a minute, but or maybe three times, I guess, where there's been like such a rush of creative energy. And so there was that with the Own Stream podcast, and it was like so fun and just like you know, our feedback on it was great. Like we just really touched people. And just because I think we're touching that place that you were just talking about that feels dissatisfied with the matrix, you know, and like it's that real part of us that wants to bust out and is like being held back by all these like fearful beliefs, which we'll talk more about, like what's trapping the creative spark, right? But and so for me, like I had that, and then like I came out of that period, and there was like I felt like it was like a dark night of the soul. Like I just felt this like kind of like I'm never gonna have I'm never gonna have an inspiration again, you know, like I just felt so that just ended very naturally. Like we got to like our 70th conversation or something, and we were like, that's it. Like this just isn't it anymore. And that kind of just it just was clear. It was not time to keep pushing that on. But I went through a period of, I guess, I don't know, 2 years maybe. I just didn't feel creatively inspired. And then like COVID happened, and it was just like that, like I was describing before, that kind of rush came in me again. I was like, oh, I want to meet this moment. And it just was so natural. The Own Stream Network came about. I mean, Stephen and I just started hosting Zoom calls to connect people. And then it was like there's so much desire for connection and desire for exchange and cross learning and like trauma healing and learning skills together and, you know, playing together online that we had a, you know, created a network. And then like out of that birthed the number three, the on, you know, on the land community project, which had been a dream of mine for a while. And then that like, you know, it was like a hyperbole, like just kind of like a, it was like it was up and then it was down. It like ended in a big fire. And and then, you know, and then since then, and then I just was kind of done with the online network too. Just like its purpose seemed like it was served for me and for others too. Like people were just disengaging and not as into engaging online, and it just kind of fizzled out for me. And then since then, it's been maybe a year and a half since that, a year. I've just kind of been, and now this new, I'm getting like, I'm in that space now of like new creative bubbling where I told Bryony before this, I've been having these dreams of connecting mothers. And I've been doing my own trauma healing, and I've been a part of recovery networks. And I've been thinking about how I feel like there's a very strong need. And it's coming now from my own experiences too, right? Like Brian and I were talking about before this call, how we think like, our greatest creative inspirations often come from where we have most struggled or suffered. And I think for me, like becoming a mother was such a challenge. And it just like threw in my face all of my childhood trauma, and it was just not what I expected. It's also been like the highest joys I've ever had and the highest, greatest love amid my own struggle. So I was in this recently, I was in this mom's group online, and I thought, wow, this is like so, something like this is so needed. Like I can imagine these circles for women. And so that's just, it's kind of bubbling. Like I can imagine doing something in person, I can imagine doing something online. But, in response to the question about like, I feel this kind of like, I feel again, this sort of like these limiting thoughts, which I think are what can like can tamp down our creative expression sometimes. Like, and I know you've had your own version of this too, that you overcome, Bryony, but like now I'm having this, oh, have I come far enough in my own healing? That's such a common one. If you feel that, that's such a common one because I do think we fear failure and we fear success. So I have this, I'm not far enough. I don't have enough to offer, or yeah, who am I to do this for other women? There's for me, it's usually like that kind of level of self-worth, like if separation is a disease of humanity, so is like low self-worth and the not enoughness disease. And like, so there's that like, oh, I don't have it. And I think you and I were talking before, Brian, and I'd love for you to talk about how you've pushed through this because like that, like just doing it, right? She said at the beginning, we always say we're doing it because, you know, just doing it because that holds back. Oh, it holds back so much creative expression, right? It's like, it holds back so much that wants to be birthed into the world that just that thought. And
Yeah.
we all, I believe, we're exactly where we're meant to be in our process, and we have exactly what we're meant to give. And it's a courageous act to just step forward because it's only fear. It's not true that we have nothing to offer. It's a fear holding us back.
Mm. Yeah. There's so much juicy stuff. Yeah. There's so much that I feel around that question of how to navigate the moment of, shall I put this forwards or not? Is this the
Yeah.
moment? Is it good enough? Will it be good enough? Will anyone come?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um, and so like when you speak about the system societies, like, well, so there's a few things. There's a way of measuring success that I think is a little bit unhelpful to artistic creative expression freely, where it's got to have 1 million followers or it's got
Right.
to make $1 million, or I don't know, it's got to be X, Y, and Z. And the thing is, like, actually just doing it, that moment where you do decide, okay, I'm gonna put on this show. Um, I'm gonna like host this group and see what happens. The actual energetic thing that happens inside you who's instigating that is so powerful, I think, and maybe slightly underrated, slightly under, it could be focused on more like, well, you did it, that's it.
Mm.
um that's so human. Like even today doing this talk together, for me it took a little bit of a like, I'm gonna do it. Because it's a new format and I've thought about it for so long.
Yeah.
And sometimes we can also have a thing of like, oh, wait, I'll wait till someone invites me. I'll wait till someone invites me to perform here, or I'll wait for someone to invite me to be interviewed. But it's like, oh, I just want to talk. We've got all the technology, we've got all the stuff, we've got the internet, we can use it all positively. There's nothing stopping us. apart from the idea that we shouldn't, or we're not good enough, or we can't, or all the things. So for example, like just recently with the contact jam, it was, I think I want to do a contact jam. Yep, feeling like people will be up for that. Make the flyer, it's like take the first step, the first event, like 10 people came, yay, and then great, this has got legs. For me, it's a lot about trial and error and sort of keep taking the steps towards the thing, unless you get a moment where you're like, oh no, this isn't feeling very alive, keep going. And that's how I kind of manage all of that self-doubt or negative stuff. And what you said about the way this system wants to like separate us, that's another thing that can come in. What will people think of me? You might host something beautiful and get like 9 people come, or 90 people, or 900 that love it, and 100 people who, do you know what I mean? A small percentage that will criticize, or that will be competitive, or will, but that's actually not powerful compared to, you've already done it, you've already shown up. And so whatever comes from pushing through to be able to do that is always positive, I think, even if it brings up some messy stuff or some things to transmute.
And maybe because it does that, right? Like we were talking about before this, like I talked about our community like rising and falling, right? And it's like we were talking about, Stephen and I had done that in an interview around the time of our community ending, and this topic came up of like the point is the purification. So like the point, another way of saying that is like the point is the experience. The point is the pushing through. Like I was thinking about it while you were talking, Bryony, like we're like honing ourselves into diamonds or something, and it's like we have to, if we don't, we just stay back here like this lump of coal, right? Or something. So many people get held back from never doing anything. So then it's like, and I did too, for a while. And so then it's like each of these experiences like hones our gift to give, I guess is what I'm thinking. So even though the community like it was what I thought I wanted, and there's so many reasons that didn't work out, that's nobody's fault. It was just like a learning experience, more or less, and it like kind of put us into the fire of like mirroring for each other a bunch of our own traumas and like lots of questions that came up, and we all emerged, I think, from that so much stronger. And then for me, like one of the things that arose was this knowledge that I wanted to be doing things with families. It wasn't just like no other families were involved in this project, right? And so now this new impulse is coming. And I feel like that's true for you too. It's like you mentioned you used to do the contact, used to do the groups, the contact improv groups here in Boone, in the States, and like how that the next step, it's like we might not even know why we do the thing. We have the creative impulse, we do the thing. And it might be the thing has a ton to offer. It might be like honing us, but both things are so valuable, and I love how you said how we have all these false measures of success. Like I remember sometimes I would host groups on OwnStream on the network online. And I would start to be like, oh, if like 30 people showed up, that was great. But if 3 people showed up, oh, that was a failure. But then if I stayed present with those 3 people, sometimes those were the most amazing groups. So like I really feel like if there's something in us, that creative impulse that wants to come, that there's somebody that's going to reach. And we don't know why it's going to come. We just have to answer it, whether it's to sharpen us and hone our gift or to like reach that one person who needs it at that moment. We have no idea. If we follow it though, like I think we're shown. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And sometimes our ideas are a bit before the wave of people catching on to something like that. So it's never really sure, like if not very many people come, or sometimes you hit on something and loads of people immediately come, but it's all about timing. And if we allow it, because that's alive for us, and try not to judge ourselves in any way really after the event, before, whatever, it's just I'm doing it and it feels right. And I always know, because in my body I feel more clear after I've done it, or I feel lighter. or even if there's some like interference voices in the head after kind of micro analyzing every single thing that happened in the show or whatever, I kind of like, once they pass maybe 24 hours, it's getting quicker and quicker. I know like my body feels lighter. It feels more like, oh yeah, because if I don't use the energy, it gets a bit stagnant and heavy, and so there's like a physical read on, yeah, this is a good direction. I can feel
Mm.
that.
Mm.
So maybe that's one of the ways of the conditions we can give ourselves to sort of combat these distractions and be more centered, is like a little bit of that space to feel. That's what I do anyway, like to feel, how's it going, some spaciousness.
Mhm.
It's a creative act for someone could be just going to someone's event. That could be their big thing. It doesn't have to be hosting a thing or buying a massive piece of land, or it depends where we're at. Like sometimes just literally going to an event is like a big stepping out. And it doesn't really matter what it is. It's just if we do that, it is good. Like it's good. It's a good direction.
Yeah, I love that. I was thinking when you were sharing that, like it's for anyone who feels like they don't know what their creative impulse is. Like, because that was me for a long time, and sometimes it still is. Like I think like it might feel overwhelming to think, oh, I'm not ready to like open a group or like open a community or like start a contact improv. Like I think there's um I love that you mentioned that because I know for me for a while I was so like pushed down by like, the conditions under which I took my life, which was like for me, it was like, oh, I was a student, I just studied. I went to law school. I lived in this like box. And so I never listened to myself. I was such a people pleaser growing up. I just was like, please, 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 my parents. And like that is not uncommon. And so like breaking out of that, at first it's like you have to take baby steps to even know what you want to do. So I think like going to a contact jam, for example, oh, that sounds interesting. Or like going to a, watercolor class or pottery. It's like just like taking little steps to like awaken your creative juices because I think we all have them. Again, some of us might think I'm not creative, but like it's just that we have to practice the muscle. So yeah, that showing up in an event is like also so valuable because also when you show up, you make the community. You're part of the community by showing up. You make the space. You are creating by being part of it.
Yeah, that's the point I wanted to hone in on, actually. That felt really powerful where you said that, yeah, I think I've already mentioned it, but that separation is what is killing it, our communities. So
Yes.
as soon as we do something together, and especially if it sparks our creativity and we're collectively doing it, it's like two fingers up to that, stick it to the man, because all they need to do is separate us and make us feel isolated. And this has happened with a lot of parenting, hasn't it? They
Oh,
used to
yes.
be more of a held thing for the all of that. So that's how I feel parenting, and parents are being tortured, is like, got to do it all alone. It's like, ah. So with
Yes.
anything, like we're trying on our own, all in our separate spaces, as soon as we come together and do something together, attend someone else's event that feels aligned, or put your voice in the room in some discussion, it absolutely like sees to that. It brings us together. And then when we do that, or like, when you go to a really good show performance, because for a while there I was like, during 2020, all those events, I was like, what's the benefit of performing in this time? Like it just seems
Mm.
like it's much more fundamental stuff, like how are we
Mhm.
going to have a clean food supply and water supply? Well, I'm just got loads of songs to sing. But actually when you go to a really nice performance, you get a sense of togetherness. That crowd, if it's like got that vibration coming from the people on stage, it brings people into that, like, oh. You go to a festival or something and everyone leaves a bit more loose, a bit more, yeah, I'm part of a bigger thing. It's not just me and my iPhone and my ambitions or whatever or not, but actually being together. And I think that's why, like, this thread of creative spark and impulses and community, because they always happen together, you know, like you do something and it brings people together. So there's
Yeah,
always community happening
I
through.
remember you saying when we were thinking about this conversation that like, and you were just mentioning it, but like when we were doing the community project on the land, you were always saying, people were saying growing food's the most important, and you were like, art's the most important. And like, I love that because I also think we get in Armageddon mode, you know, it becomes this like real like survival, like let's stock the pantry and like we can forget like that actually is like kind of a separation impulse, right? Like and like the prepper impulse. And even like in here, I'm still on the land, so I'm pointing outside. Like I still live here on the land that we bought for the community. And like we picked a place like so far away from everything, so no one would ever find us. It was kind of the idea. We're going to create the new on this piece of land so far away from everybody else, you know? And I can laugh about that idea now. But I think I like there was such a like in that community project, there were really like streams of purity, like real pure impulse to create and create a community and create the beautiful and a new way of living and interacting together. And then there was also this fearful separation, like let's hide, you know, and like let's prep. And I think that art is like is that real connecting impulse. Like you were sharing before about one of your impulses to sing and to create is to reach the creative spark in others, you know, reach the realness, basically, the truth in others. And I think that that connects like when we do that. And I do think even like I was thinking about it when you were saying that like when we walk away from an event, often it's the art that we remember. It's the art that really connects us. And I was thinking about, you know, a friend and I do a homeschool co-op here at our house. But the things I remember, and it's all beautiful. It's so beautiful. We do it every Thursday. And the things I remember are like, you know, the craft projects we did together, the beautiful things we made, the we do cooking projects together a lot. We bake, we make stews, we do things. You know, like that's what I remember. I remember that. I remember to even from our community project, I remember times that we, you know, that we were singing or, you know, all singing around the room in the holidays or in the kitchen creating something like that. That's really what stands out. And that's what lasts.
I
It's what
remember,
connects and what lasts.
was that?
It's what connects us. I think it's what connects us to ourselves and to each other. And it's like
Yeah,
what lasts in terms of like an enduring, like emotional
yeah,
memory.
yeah, and it builds those
Yeah,
moments, like build the bonds of um our connection and our knowing each other. I remember a garden project that I did with you, and it's stayed with me forever because you had
so
more
beautiful.
knowledge about gardening, but you were so just like free about it all. And we were like, well, how do we do this bit? Oh, I don't know. Yeah, that's how we do that. Great, let's do it. And then we produced a lot of produce,
It
but
was
there
one
was
of the
no
best
like,
days.
this is how you do it. You're wrong.
Yeah.
It was just really funny, and we would sing and like discover. And there's a lot of things we can remind ourselves of these days that may have been sort of like pushed out of culture, but we're coming back to them. Just basic manual skills or
Yeah.
ways to combine all those things with artistic thing. Not it had been compartmentalized, like Saturday night entertainment, that's your singers, and everyone's like all over, and it's all actually more interwoven. Um, so
Yeah. Yeah. No, sorry, go ahead.
yeah, that's it.
Yeah, look, I was thinking when you were sharing, like I feel like we've also been systematically disconnected from working with our hands, you know, like
Yes.
those have been pushed into like the working trades, you know, like no, you sit in front of a computer and work, you know. And that's another thing I think is so crazy. Like I've benefited from the Zoom culture. I mean, here we are on Zoom right now, but I benefited a lot from Zoom culture because of the network and even my, you know, the work I do on the side is like remote and but like that is so separating too, you know, like just feel like it's so disconnecting. Like here we are. Oh, it's so easy to work from home now. Oh, great. But like this coming together, like what we create energetically and like what we can actually build with our hands when we come together, like it's like you said, I mean, it's been kind of sidelined into here and there. not part of who we are.
Yeah, well, that feels like a whole different tangent. But actually in Wales, one of the values I've found in the culture is that there's a respect for people who work with their hands and it's not looked down on. But there are cultures in which people doing all the manual stuff with their hands are seen as lesser.
Yeah.
But they're the ones who are quite kind of connected.
Yes.
It does something, doesn't it? When you're like, yeah, like connects you to the earth. It's really empowering. So it's a
Yeah.
funny thing that's happened there. Um, any funny things
Yeah.
that are not funny at all, but um,
Right.
yeah, like busting through those illusions of like basically programming in the mind. Um, and that actually brings me to a next point, which I wonder if feels like a sort of an interesting place to go, is the practicalities of creating various things, whether it's events or the communities or the things we've done. You've got that like money factor, all these things that can come up as a, well, I can't do this because I haven't got X, Y, and Z. I
Mm-hmm.
don't have a studio, so how can I make my paintings? I don't have the money to buy this fabric or this, I don't know, I'm not just limiting it to art, but I don't know, I want to start a bakery, but I don't have the money or I don't have the time. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
that actually feels like it would be nice to give a little focus to, because I think that is part of the illusion.
Oh yeah. I mean, I think that the I'm not enough self-worth disease is like one train of thought, and the other that's just directly related is like I don't have enough money and like I don't have the money to do it. It's like it's been so ingrained in us. It's so ingrained. I feel like this thinking is like maybe the hardest thing to overcome,
Mm.
because we've been trained. And I did, my father grew up in the Great Depression, and he was like a super like self-made man where he like became a police officer and he like rose in the ranks and he had like an administrative job. And by the time he was raising me, he was like older and he had like kind of security, so like I was taught about security and you got to work hard to make money, and that train of we all have our own money story, but the you got to work hard to make money, that one is like definitely that one's like ingrained in me. But I know, like the other part of me knows that's not actually how it works. I really believe how it works is we respond to these creative impulses and then something meets us. The universe will meet us in some way. So, in thinking about, I kind of want to create a community space too, right? So I have this like desire to connect families and create more of a village. And some of it might just start with these like, it wouldn't cost me anything today to host a online women's circle. I'd have to overcome the hump of thinking I'm not enough. I'm not far enough in my journey for that. But like, it wouldn't cost me anything to do it. It wouldn't cost me anything to like, even if I found a physical space, I bet I could find a donated physical space to start with. I bet I could. Like, there's like, and that's like, I think that the end kind of defeats the end thought often can defeat the first step, which is like, oh, these first steps actually wouldn't cost me anything, or it probably wouldn't cost me much, or maybe I could get everybody to donate a tiny bit for the space. Whoever knows, right? But like I know that I can get defeated by the end. For example, like we're thinking about moving to California, and it's like twice as expensive as living here. But I know I can't stay here because I'm afraid of it costing too much to live in California. Like the impulse is to go to be more in a community that we feel connected to than where we are right now. We are really connected to a few communities here, so we've also thought about moving to a couple other towns near here. But like that, what's driving me is like wanting to be connected to a community that I can create in and thrive with other mothers and families and like then start something. But I feel like maybe you've experienced that too with the West Wales Expression Center. Maybe connect, talk about that, like those initial steps, like how you take those initial steps when you have those money fears.
Yeah, well, I'm just tuning in firstly to that moment, like that specific moment where you've got the idea and you feel this excitement.
Yes.
And then there's this like literally instant, it's like a split second moment where something can come in and go, "Hmm." It's like, "Hmm."
Uh,
That's how it feels.
yes.
So you can't do that because blah, blah, blah. And it is blah, blah, blah. It's whatever. So, like, busting through that moment feels like it could start being texting a good friend who supports your work and saying, I'm going to do this. And they go, woo, yeah, do it. Or booking a space if you're at that point. Or yeah, dates in the diary really help me. The small steps, it's like dividing it up into these small steps. My partner who I'm making music with, first step, he wanted a drum machine. So he had to go and get some manual labor job, which he then worked his butt off to then afford to get this drum machine. Then it's like, I've got the drum machine. How do I use it? He's obviously got a nous for that kind of thing, but like, okay, now I'm doing this. Oh my God. And now we're sat here and he's got like a full setup and we're about to do a gig next week. And in my dream space has been, well, I started off in this. So I've got this solo project, which I started in 2020 and then slightly put on pause, but during the various other things happening, but it's been bubbling. And I've had this desire to have like somebody or a band behind me. And until I could get that, I had to create all of the backing myself. So I was like, right, whatever, I'll use my loop pedal and my keyboard. I know the sound could be better in the future, but I'll just do this for now. And sure enough, someone comes in because you haven't given up. And
Yes.
then like, oh, right, I'll do the backing bit for you. And you're like, bingo, that would be awesome. Can't wait for that. And then, okay, next level. So it's not like this easy thing where you suddenly go, oh, it's happening. I mean, there are moments, isn't there, where it surges and everything's in place and it just goes, boom. But first it's up to us to take the small step to commit to something, or even just to commit to the part of ourselves that says, I'm not going to die while I'm alive. I'm going to keep following the spark. And yeah, I do think breaking it up into little steps, but also like the money thing that comes in, it is a thing, you have to act within your means. So like, sort of, I think I have an idea that this West Wales Expression Centre will eventually be a physical building with studios and a theatre and a cafe space, and I see that that's probably going to happen. And right now I don't have the money for that, but hiring a space means that it's still a centre, but it moves to different locations. And just like trial and error, I've had experiences with some local spaces I've hired where actually the building was too cold and not quite right for a dance event. So I had to sort of cancel that one and, okay, I'm not going to use that space anymore, just obvious things. But that the money, I don't have the money to like buy a building and make that the West Wales Expression Centre. But I have money to hire a space, at least 1 2-hour slot, and see. And then suddenly, like, as you get on board, it's amazing how the magic happens, isn't it? And then some money comes in from somewhere you can't even understand why it's in your bank account. But you're like, oh, I could book 5 more spaces. Oh, look, some people came, so now I got some money from that. So there is a kind of like, I think there's a skipping ahead to slightly beyond my means, but possible, compared to like, oh, I've got to get from here to like owning a building. That's not possible right now physically. But if I do these like jumps and keep believing in it, then that will at some point that will become possible if it's aligned, if it's still what I want at that point. And same with the creation of a music project or anything else. And I'm saying all of that with a massive like disclaimer of how much I can feel like money, this, whatever it is, the limitations are the challenges, like they're very much felt. But I think not letting it stop us is the key.
100%. I'm just like nodding my head off over here. like the last thing you said, I was gonna say it, you said it basically, which is like I think believing it is the key, you know, and I think that is our biggest challenge. Like I will speak for myself, I think it's the human condition based on how we've been conditioned. Like almost everybody. I had this one friend, Stephen and I had this one friend in New York who just he didn't have any money issues because he always had money. And like so he always believed he would have money because he'd always had money. And you know what? He always did. And he helped Stephen fundraise for a festival he was doing at the time. We just marveled at this guy because we just thought he doesn't have the money issues we had because he has always had money. And he grew up with the narrative that money will always be there. And money was always there for him. And I totally believe, I 100% believe, and I have a couple books to recommend that I'm reading right now. But
Yeah.
if you believe it, the universe will provide. You know, I do, and I'm saying that also with a very in progress belief system myself, right? So like I have been, oh my God, for years trying to study the different ways to overcome what's in my mind, you know, and I'm still in progress with that. So things I'm reading, there's a book called The Game of Life and How to Play It. It's an amazing book of Florence, Scovel, Shinn, and the Four Spiritual Laws of Prosperity by Edwene Gaines. Amazing books. And you know, there's the classic Think and Grow Rich, and there's so many books written on this that basically, if we can believe it, right? But I love how you talked about it in the baby steps, right? Because we might not believe that if we go put in a contract to buy a building, the money is going to show up because we just like we probably can't get there yet. But what we can get there too, and I love it. You also said something. What'd you say? And then someone shows up just because you didn't give up. That is like so brilliant too, because I do believe it's that if you continue the creative stream, right? And whatever you can believe. So it's like the next step. Oh, I can do this next step. I can like whatever it is, book a space for this event. I can, you know, work with my friend to use her house for this event. I can put it out there. Then I'm going to put a poster up. I love it. I'm just going to put a poster up and now there's a contact jam. You know, it's like it's bold to do it. But that's what it takes. It's like, I'm just going to take that next step. And then my belief can believe up to that next step. Okay, so people are going to show up for this, you know, and okay, and then next, what's the next step? Like, because there's always a next step. Because I also have gotten defeated by the end. Oh my God, because I want to have a community space too, right? I imagine like a community space for families, and there's like art workshops, and there's room for meeting spaces for moms, and there's like this and that, and you know, and there's a beautiful community space near me an hour away here, and I love that space. I've been trying to learn from her. Like, so my first step, I just reached out to her. Can we have a conversation? I just want to hear how you created this. Or like just start a like I said, just start a meeting. Okay, I'm just going to arrange a meeting of women. That's the first step. Or you're going to just book a space for this contact gym. And like that's how it works. Like we bust through one level of blockage, whether it's I don't think I'm enough or oh, I don't have the money. I'm just gonna take this step, and it like inches out. It like expands us, expands out into the world. We create one level, and then like we create the next level, and I think like we can get so defeated by the end fear, you know, and it's all just a thought. Like I loved how you describe, oh, this true impulse comes. Oh, I'm gonna do this thing. Oh no, I can't because you
Yeah.
know, like it's such a like thanks for giving like a visual to that and like the just describing it because how many of us have gone through that? Oh no, I can't because no thoughts. But like that's the truth. The uprising's the truth. The thoughts the
Yeah.
conditioning. It's like not real. So it's like if I'm just okay, I'm just gonna take the first step because I believe I can do this first step. And then who knows? And then like somebody shows up to back you in the band, right? It's like then something might show up to just because you didn't give up. I love that because it's energy. It's all energy moving, right? If I can, that's what creation is. If I can move my energy out there just a little bit, I've created something. I've changed the world in this small way.
Yeah. And it's like you're on a runway, maybe you're pedaling for a while until at a certain point is a tipping point, isn't it? And then you're up and it's that the plane takes off. And then that's when it gets easier because people are seeing you in your shining and they're
Yeah.
just drawn, magnetized.
Yes.
But there's an inevitable amount of me deciding on my own first and starting it off. And that happens again and again and again over the course of life. You have a success wave and you do a big thing and that ends, and then, oh, I've got to get another thing going. But actually, they're all building on each other. And
Yeah.
there's one point I wanted to add in my own journey that feels relevant, which is going from like plenty of experiences in the past of really rich experiences of being in either like in the dance theatre world in London, and being part of big productions that are funded and big directors, but sort of in the system. And then again, like I went into the music world and lived in Paris for 10 years in a band, and we got a big record label, or kind of like a big indie record label in the end, but we had different offers, and we sort of toyed with the idea of bigger labels too. But what we ended up doing was still in the system, and I'm not sure of the future. Like, I'm not averse to ever collaborating with a record company, for example. I'm not really sure, but I know that in the past, I think I bent a little bit to fit in with their requirements. And what's different now is I'm like, I cannot do that. So there's a sort of hard moment I remember where I felt, oh, so I've got to build it from the ground up. Like, that just feels like, because the idea that you have a bunch of a great idea in some realm, for me, it's like music or performance. So I'm going to get the album to demo level, then I'll take it to this record company and they'll help me do that bit, maybe, but maybe not. And so that has at times, having been in that and felt that, oh, suddenly you take it to whatever organization, but it's in the system, so there's always these caveats that feel like, or compromises, but they do boost you. Suddenly you've got a team and you need a team. But so I don't know what the future holds, but how to get something strong enough so that it's like, if it does get picked up by some funding body or organization, even if it's in the system, that it's got a strong enough signature of my idea and my vision, that it's not going to get changed, because that's what happened in the past. Like, okay, I had this pure vision, and you see it with artists and good projects of any kind.
Yeah.
Oh, it used that. Oh, they sold out, they became a franchise, and now that food product is crap. Or that artist started off, they had so much juiciness, and now you see them, they just look like a puppet. So it's like, how, that's a whole another discussion, but like how to get the idea. And I think that's been one of the recent challenges, to feel, oh, maybe I don't have yet, again, maybe it will come, but maybe I don't right now have that lift that did give in some ways.
Yeah.
So that takes some staying power and some stamina. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's similar to, I don't know, it's similar to the doubts that arise in the mind. Because it's kind of like, if we get to, like, say, the record label or whoever that external support is, and it doesn't feel right, then it's kind of like, it's like giving into that doubt mind again, right? It's like, I can't do it on my own, is sort of the ultimate thought interrupter, right? And so it's like, yeah, that's so important, because I think there's so many dreams. Steven's working on a show, right? And he's imagining like different funders, and there's
Yeah.
so many dreams, because when we can't imagine how to get from here to there, we start to think like of all the ways that we've been taught we might be able to get from here to there. And one of those ways is some big funder comes in and helps me, some booster. And like, I guess it's just part of the same limiting thoughts belief, right? That like, that's how we've been told it can happen. So Steve and I have talked about this. How am I going to produce this show in LA? Da 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 da. And it's like, we have these limited thoughts that come in, but really it could happen in any infinite set of ways. But like, we have this thought, it's only going to happen this way. It's only going to happen this way. And I think you're right. It's another version of that thought of like, I'm not enough, basically. Because it's like, oh, then that'll get me there, but I can't get me there.
Yeah. Yeah. Or I need these really wealthy clients for my coaching business, or I need these like certain people to interview me, or yeah, it can. But the thing is, it would
It
come
could.
from a different place. It would just be like, oh yeah, that's just come in from my own, like, putting my thing out there constantly, and that feels aligned, fine. Or I'm in a position where I'm strong enough with the boundaries, I can negotiate a really good contract, and it's all
Yeah.
right, like, but it wouldn't be from, I can't and I need that. So it's really like, yeah, subtle. So I guess I wonder if we feel to start wrapping up in this exploration.
Yeah.
And I wonder if there's anything else you wanted to cover or share, or share about your vision going forward with any certain project, or even just that personal process of where you're at with that freeing the creative spark in relation to community or not.
Yeah, I guess I just want to thank you for having this conversation, because it actually, like, I haven't said anything out there about I haven't said anything about like having a creative vision for something next, So I've been playing around with the idea. Like, it's very much like it feels, I was about to say it feels in its infancy, right? But I mean, I guess I have been thinking about it for a while. Um, One thing we didn't talk about, but we had talked about before, was that there's this idea about like bloom where you're planted versus like imagine, oh, it's going to happen when I go to this place. And I have been imagining this community space also, and I don't feel like I'm in the right place for it. But I will be curious to watch that thinking when I go to the next place, because it's like, is it just another blockage? Like I'm not enough, or I don't have enough money, like I'm not in the right place, can be another one of those. It can so easily be another one of those. Whereas like I think we're always in the right place in some way or another, right? But so like there's that idea, like, oh, when I move, I might do this. And I've done enough. I think I introduced you to the expression like pulling geographics before, but like it's this
Yeah.
expression in the recovery world, like when I change my outsides, my insides are going to change. Like, and sometimes it's true that like, hey, Stephen thinks that his show would be more received in LA than it would here in Shady Valley. Okay, there's like some reality to that. And he did test out a show here last year, so there is some reality to like feeling drawn, creatively drawn, having a true impulse to be in a certain place. I think there's a truth to that. But I've had to watch that because I think it can be another one of those strains of like, if I blah, blah, blah. But so I guess I just appreciate the conversation because it's helped me be more aware of my own, like what might be stifling my creative spark in those different areas we talked about. And like just kind of giving me a kick in the butt a little bit to start taking those baby steps, because I know that like I have this train of thought, which I said before, of like I'm not there yet. I'm not far enough along yet. That is like a threshold that's kind of limiting me. So um I had thanked Bryony before this because I felt like it's fun to just have another podcast conversation because I haven't done it in so long. And I feel my creative juices get like stirred up because I've been doing a lot of inner work for about a year and a half, and really looking at a lot of like, doing the artist's way and doing A Course in Miracles and looking at like these things that, and reading those books and looking at these things that might be blocking me. But it's really time. I feel like you get to these, like we talked about those plateaus, right? You have these plateaus and they can be new periods of growth too, where something starts to bubble, but maybe it's time for me. I feel really enlivened by just like getting out there. So maybe it's time for me to start to, yeah, to start to test some of those thoughts that might be stifling me too, and excited for the next creative phase.
Yeah.
What's next for you, Bryony?
Well, I just wanted to respond to that saying like, uh, sort of like imposter syndrome. We know what that is, and
Yeah.
that doesn't need to stop us. What qualifies me to host a series of conversations? Well, I qualified me.
Yes.
Or to like, claim a name like West Wales Expression Centre. I don't know, it just feels right. Like it's quite playful. I'm not trying to like say I know how to live. It's just, how about this? I could offer this group for mothers, or the imposter syndrome is like, nah, we don't need to listen to that. Yeah, go for it. Try. You might not even like it, might not take off, and then it will just be another great thing that happened, and or it might become a thing. Um, and then the other thing, and then I'll respond to that question of what's next. But it was that being kind to ourselves and surrounding ourselves. Like I've come to recognize what it feels like when an idea is nascent, like I call it like a sapling. It's still a young plant, or it's like a little poked its head above. So I'm not going to go to a family member who doesn't really understand my life path and tell them about it, because they'll probably go, "Oh, how are you going to make any money?" I'm like, that's not
Yep.
what it needs. It's like a little baby or something. You got to protect that, and then the right moment you have to also share it. But like kind of giving yourself what you tuning into that, and mothering it or fathering it at its different point of development, and also not forcing ourselves before we're ready. That's another thing we get to feel deeply.
I love that, Bryony. That can be really tricky. And I love that it feels like that, right? It's like nurturing it so that it can grow. Like there is that stage too. So
Yeah.
I'm glad you put words to that, because that's so important.
Yeah, and this is probably, in the likelihood that this continues and does become a series of conversations, there's somebody I want to talk about spaciousness, giving ourselves spacious time where we're not really trying to achieve anything. We might brainstorm or do various things or create something, but if you're just showing up for that time, having less pressure that X, Y, Z has to happen, and then there's obviously a moment where it's like the show's tomorrow. So it's like a combo of having that nothingness as well as stuff happening. But in terms of what's next, but so I've got a show next week. A friend's hosting a big party, a private party, at her lovely place, and there's a collective of DJs that are going to be there too. And I feel like, oh, this feels like a really rich part of the community for my music to be experimented with. So that's
Cool.
coming up. So we're preparing for that, and then I'm hosting a show, public show, in December, where I'll do like a full length concert. So it's all under that umbrella of the West Wales Expression Centre. And then we got the jams, the contact jams will keep going forward. Which actually, contact improvisation is the sparking off point. But I'm always telling people solo dancing is really welcome, and actually it can turn into just a very free form expression of people vocalizing, and but very like grounded, like no pressure to be wild, but like there's spaciousness there, and there's live music, and there's tea, you can come kind of watch. So like just kind of seeing that grow, and working with those practical constraints of like spaces that are available, and whether it's weekly or every 3 times a month or whatever, just that kind of thing. We're just digging in, and maybe some more events. I thought of hosting something for performers and makers. So like where performers don't have a project, or makers don't have performers they need, and just having a moment and see if people want to come to that, trial and error it. And then in the end, like that is kind of my vision, that you would have a space where instead of having, you've got like performers in between jobs, paying for workshops so that they could keep dancing or acting or doing their thing, you might just be like in the middle of a process and invite people to come join you and then meet each other. That's
Cool.
in the future, but I think just creating little spaces that go in that direction. So, or not so little, maybe.
Cool. I wish I could come. Maybe in the future.
Yeah, I'll have to come to you.
Host a workshop in LA this winter.
All right then.
Be there.
Yeah, or a show. We'll come and do a show.
Why not?
Um,
Cool. Thank you, Bryony. This has been
yeah.
awesome.
Thanks so much to you too for sharing all of that, Theresa. It's just like so rich to be in that together. I'm so grateful. Bye.
Bye.